What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. The MLB season has come to an end. Congratulations to the Houston Astros on winning their second World Series in franchise history.
First
Uh,
real one.
yes, you can make the argument of first real one, um, but but great series, great way to end the season. Now we move into personally my favorite time of year, the off season, where the rumor mill's hot. You get to all the speculations, free agency, awards talks, all that fun stuff. And we've got awards talks for you today. This week, the list of awards finalists for the National League and American League for the four major awards all came out. So we're going to break down the three finalists here, and I'm going to give my predictions on who I think is going to come home with the hardware this year. So let's not waste any time here. Let's jump right into it with Manager of the Year.
All right. In the NL, we've got Buck Showalter, Brian Snitker, and Dave Roberts. Who's your pick?
This one's a lot closer than it got a lot closer towards the end of the season. You know, Dave Roberts, obviously, when you win more than 110 games, having that 111 win, one of the more historic years for the Dodgers. Brian Snitker really taking this team, putting them in a position that at the time when the regular season ended, put them in a position to repeat. They caught up and ended up overtaking the Mets for that division lead. But I'm still going to go with Buck Showalter here. I think there were, in my opinion, there were many doubts when Showalter was hired. He was an old school manager in a new school style of game. You know, the lasting impression we got from Showalter was, you know, that 2016 AL wildcard series were in extra innings. He refused to put out not only his closer, but one of the best closers in baseball, and Zach Britton, again, opting for Ubaldo Jimenez. And then we all know what happened when Edwin Encarnacion came to the plate and promptly unloaded on Jimenez's poorly placed pitch. So it was decisions like that where we thought, can Buck Showalter really manage a modern day baseball team? And I think he did fantastic with this Mets team, taking them to 100 wins, really revamping this offense, which struggled in the past to support better starting pitchers like Jacob deGrom. So I think there was the least expected out of him, but the most return on expectations. So I'm going to go with Buck Showalter here for National League Manager of the Year.
In the AL, we've got Terry Francona, Brandon Hyde, and Scott Service. Who's your pick?
Uh, I think I think it's between Terry Francona and Brandon Hyde because again, there were very low expectations for the Guardians and for the Orioles. I'm going to go with Tito here and go with Terry Francona because I think he did the most with the low expectations that he had. Obviously, winning that division. That's not to knock Brandon Hyde. Obviously, he's in a tougher division, being in the AL East with Baltimore. But Terry Francona, taking a team that had 17 players make their major league debut this year and comfortably win that division when, again, this was supposed to be a rebuilding team. They had recently got rid of Lindor. They've gotten rid of, you know, prime guys like Kluber over the years. So it was Shane Bieber and Jose Ramirez and just the band of youth. And you know, that youth really showed up. They showed up strong. He got good performances out of guys like Tristan McKenzie, guys like Cal Quantrill, Emmanuel Clase in the bullpen. I think everything went well. Obviously, we can't take playoffs into consideration, but it did feel good to see a Terry Francona led team make it to almost making the ALCS. A great series that they had with the Yankees. Again, obviously doesn't count to Manager of the Year, but I'm going to go with Terry Francona because, again, low expectations, but he did the most with it, winning that division, which, again, I think everyone thought that the White Sox were a shoo-in to win that. And obviously they did not. It was Cleveland, and it was Cleveland comfortably.
And now we'll move on to Rookie of the Year, starting with the NL. We've got Michael Harris, Spencer Strider, and Brendan Donovan.
Yeah, and I think it's really between Michael Harris and Spencer Strider. No disrespect to Brendan Donovan, but these guys were just dominant. And it's really interesting that both of them being teammates, you don't see that too often, seeing two teammates being that close where it's splitting hairs. I'm going to opt for Michael Harris, though, because when it comes to splitting hairs between a positional player and a pitcher, I'm going to opt for the positional players in the close races here simply because I think they do just that little bit more. You've got that offensive side, you've got that defensive side of it. I think Michael Harris was just dominant, one of the best center fielders in baseball this year. Really, again, not a whole lot of expectations for Michael Harris coming into the year. And he really did the most with it. I mean, the same goes for Spencer Strider. I would not be surprised if he won it either. Again, this was a guy that coming into spring training had a shot at making the bullpen to the point where he was their best pitcher, not named Max Fried, being a top two in that rotation for at that point, reigning World Series champion. That's high praise for this guy. I'm going to opt for Michael Harris. I just think his offensive numbers were just a little more exciting to me than Spencer Strider's pitching numbers this year.
And in the AL, we have Julio Rodriguez, Adley Rutschman, and Stephen Kwan.
And I'm going to go again. I think it's between Rodriguez and Rutschman here. Great season by Kwan, but I think these guys really separated themselves. And I'm going to go with Julio Rodriguez simply because he played more games, higher slugging percentage. He had more speed, leading the American League in stolen bases this year. I just think he's overall more rounded than Adley Rutschman. He just had a more rounded season. I'm going to go with Julio Rodriguez here.
He's definitely the more exciting player too.
He is, and he's certainly deserving of that potentially record-breaking deal, where I think it's around 18 years that deal could end up being just absolutely wild.
All right, we have the Cy Young in the NL. We have Julio Urias, Sandy Alcantara, and Max Fried. Who's your pick?
Now, this one's really tight. Any of these three could win Cy Young, and any of these three are deserving of Cy Young if they do get it. I'm going to opt for Julio Urias here. Again, it's a very tight race, but I do like the fact that he's got that higher K rate. He's got a better ERA, and I think he made more of an impact with the best team in baseball. I just think Julio Urias, the stats show that he's probably the more dominant pitcher. I also do feel good about Urias's chances, considering that more of the old school voters here, they do like the win stat, and Urias has the most wins out of any of these three pitchers. I don't agree with it. But again, I think it does kind of go to show that Julio Urias was dominant on a team that was already dominant. But again, they needed him to be dominant as well, because the pitching was a little up in the air, with Max Scherzer leaving, with Kershaw getting older. I think Urias really took the bull by the horns here, and really took control of this pitching staff. And I think he will take control of the pitching staff for years to come, especially with Walker Buehler. Obviously, it may be an adjustment to see when he gets back onto the mound after undergoing Tommy John surgery. I think the future is very bright for this Dodgers rotation, and I think Julio Urias, he'd be the guy that I think slightly edges out Alcantara and Fried.
All right, and then we move on to the AL. It's Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, and Alek Manoah.
And I'm going to go with Justin Verlander here. Overall, I think he was the best pitcher in baseball, just dominant with that sub-2 ERA, despite having that September injury. I think it is refreshing to see such a variety of pitchers, a variety of ages in this Cy Young race here. It is nostalgic to see a guy like Verlander, who, again, he's got MVPs, he's got Cy Youngs, he's got World Series, numerous All-Star votes,
and now a real one.
And now a real one. Should be a surefire Hall of Famer. Again, if they don't take that 2017 year and hold that against him in Hall of Fame voting, but we're getting off track here. It was nostalgic to see that, and to see that, in his late 30s, he can still go out and still be the most dominant pitcher in baseball and win a Cy Young here. But then to see young guys like Dylan Cease and Alek Manoah, who again offer you very different things. I think Dylan Cease has a higher strikeout rate here, but Alek Manoah is more of that traditional pitcher that, if he's pitching 110 pitches in a game, you're not necessarily worried. He goes out and eats up innings, will go out and consistently flirt with 200 innings pitched or past 200 innings pitched. I think he's on track to do that next season. Really kind of that old school. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to pitch 7 innings a game at least. And just a workhorse mentality. But again, to see two young guys and then the veteran and Verlander, I think it's kind of cool to see that. But again, Verlander should get it here. He was the best pitcher in baseball.
All right, and then the NL MVP is Paul Goldschmidt, Manny Machado, and Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, a couple Cardinals on this list, and I think one of the Cardinals is going to take it home here with Paul Goldschmidt. I thought he was the best hitter in the National League, even though the other two are better defenders here. And anytime a guy can flirt with a triple crown here, at one point he looked as though it was very possible for him to do it. I think that kind of bodes in your favor here. I just think, even though out of these three, ironically enough, Paul Goldschmidt has the lowest wins above replacement, but the difference between first and third there is just zero point 0.3. So at that point, again, you're just splitting hairs, virtually the same type of player. So I'm going to go with the better hitter here and go with Paul Goldschmidt. But again, a very tight race for the NL MVP. Would not be surprised if any of these guys win, especially Manny Machado.
Okay. Now, the AL MVP, that's what you all came here for. Let's not forget Yordan Alvarez is in this race, but it's really between Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, right?
Yeah, and no
And
disrespect to Alvarez. He was
yeah,
fantastic this year.
yes. But it seems a little wild that Ohtani is being regarded in the same light as Aaron Judge, isn't it?
I well, I'll just say it right now. I have Judge winning the MVP. If you go back to one of our C&D chats episodes, I was making the argument for why Judge should be MVP. But at the end of the day, we have two guys that are doing historical things. Aaron Judge put up, you know, the American League single season record, regular season record for home runs this year. The guy was just, analysts were making the argument saying that this was the best season, hitting season that the MLB has ever seen before. So like when you look at that, it's like he's doing a historical thing, and Shohei Ohtani's doing something that hasn't been done since Babe Ruth, and that is pitching and hitting consistently in a season, and doing both very well. So I think when we're making the arguments, I think there's a sense of hostility between both sides here. They're just two very opposing sides that some people think that it's insulting that anyone would consider anyone else but Ohtani to win. Some people would think it's insulting to consider anyone else but Aaron Judge. Again, I could see either of these guys winning it, and I don't have a real issue if either of these guys win it. I'm going to opt for Judge just because I think he had the better season, even though Shohei Ohtani probably is the most valuable player year in and year out to the league as a whole, considering what he does. He's the MLB's most valuable player. But again, you look at in every sport, the most valuable player to the league doesn't necessarily win the MVP every year. Connor McDavid doesn't win the MVP, or he doesn't win the Hart Trophy every year in the NHL, even though, again, he is the league's most valuable player. LeBron James, for the longest time, when he was the best player on the planet in basketball, he didn't win the MVP every year. You can say Giannis is probably the best player in basketball. He hasn't won in the past 2 years. But again, he's probably the most valuable player to the league. In the NFL, it's a little different with the MVP because it's a very quarterback heavy award there. But Tom Brady, up until this season, obviously the Bucs are struggling, but up until this season, you can make the argument he was the greatest player of all time, best player in the league. He didn't win MVP every year. He hadn't won it in the past. Aaron Rodgers, was a back-to-back MVP there. But again, Tom Brady is widely regarded as the greatest of all time. So even though these guys are the most valuable players to their respective leagues, guys can still have better seasons. And I think that's what happened here with Aaron Judge. But at the end of the day, people can argue and bicker with each other all they want about this. It's really exciting to see an MVP race, with these two dominant players, arguably the two best players. They were the two best players in baseball this year. So I just think it's really great for the game. And I think that's what people should be focusing on right now. But here, I'll make my arguments for Aaron Judge just because I've made them for everyone else. Having an 11.4 wins above replacement is just wild to me. And if you take Ohtani's combined WAR between his pitching and his hitting, That's two whole wins above replacement points higher than Shohei Ohtani's 9.4. Aaron Judge led in virtually all major hitting categories this year. Was very close to an AL Triple Crown, just missing out on the average side there to Luis Arias. But Aaron Judge, you can really pick hairs here. I think Shohei Ohtani's downfall was the fact that his hitting, I think pitching, he was a top five. He was a top five pitcher. If he ended up as a finalist for AL Cy Young, I wouldn't have been surprised. But I think his hitting, I think he's an all-star caliber player. But when you hit around 270, with a 380 on base, if a plus 500 slug there, those are great numbers. He's a great hitter, but I just don't see those as being necessarily MVP caliber numbers, especially when you have Aaron Judge, who, he hit 62 bombs this year, over 130 RBIs, was second in average, leading in things like on base and slug, OPS. So that's what I look at. Aaron Judge was just dominant, even though Shohei Ohtani is the league's most valuable player. So again, it's just exciting to see this was the most impressive MVP race that I think we'll ever get to see. So I think that's what people need to take away from this MVP race, as opposed to who won it this year, that we get to witness, two guys just do something that we might never see again.
Well, there you have it. Stay tuned. We have some more off-season videos, more awards, and just more fun across the sports world. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.